this is Sage. And tomorrow we're going to be talking about this on Logistically Speaking. And I wanted to go over this. Check it out.
So when Kamala Harris says, if we do the thing that Trump already did, it's going to be way worse than it was last time, I just don't think that makes a lot of sense.
Well, let's talk about
Sure.
Trump's record during his first term. He did impose rounds of tariffs, and it cost Americans nearly $80 billion in new taxes. Do you acknowledge that imposing more tariffs will ultimately cost consumers?
Now, what does this mean? The tariffs that he put on in 2017, 2018, and the trade war that he actually started, well, it's actually a big deal. And we're going to have to talk about that.
What it really does is it penalizes importers from bringing goods outside the country into the country. And I think that's just a necessary thing. We know that China and a number of other countries are using effectively slave labor to undercut the wages of American workers. Donald Trump thinks that has to stop. And again, what Kamala Harris is saying, Kristen, is that if you do this, you're somehow going to cause skyrocketing inflation. In reality, Donald Trump already did it. He brought a lot of jobs back, and it didn't cause inflation.
Actually, he didn't bring a lot of jobs back, and it did cause higher price for things.
It caused consumers to pay more. They paid more in taxes, $80 billion worth. Do you acknowledge that consumers ultimately will pay more if there are more tariffs imposed?
So economists...
Do you just acknowledge that?
No, I don't, Kristen, because I think economists really disagree about the effects of tariffs.
They actually don't disagree. Tariffs, we end up paying those tariffs. They're passed on to us.
Because there can be a dynamic effect, right? So what some economists will say is what you just said, that it will actually raise costs for consumers. But what other people say, and I think the record supports what this other view, is that it causes this dynamic effect where more jobs come into the country. Anything that you lose on the tariff from the perspective of the consumer, you gain in higher wages. So you're ultimately much better off. You have more take-home pay, you have better jobs, and also we have more reliance. Because one of the
And that's not true. And we have historical data to prove that. Let me play you a small clip about somebody talking about it. And we're going to go over this tomorrow so that you understand and have a better, complete understanding of what you're actually voting on.
The Great Depression. Okay, so we have war, we have a difficult recovery, then we have the Great Depression. And so what you can see is there's a period here, a 30-year period, where global integration, there's trying to come back after the war, but then all these other shocks that are pushing things down. So there's disintegration in the global economy. They tried to reconstruct the gold standard. They did it in a very poor way, and it sort of malfunctioned. They couldn't restore trade ties the way they had before, and what have you. The U.S. also contributed to this with a policy mistake. Has anyone heard of the Smoot-Hawley tariff?
And this was the Smoot-Hawley tariff. It was a protectionary tariff that was put on all goods.
Okay, maybe, yes.
Is it the tariff on wine in the 50s?
Not just on wine, on most goods. So the U.S. basically raised its tariff level the legislation was initially passed in 1929, 1930. The stock market also crashed in 1929. And this is the act. Those are the members of Congress that introduced this legislation to raise tariffs as the world economy was in this rather fragile state. A lot of economists, over 1,000 economists, requested that the president at the time, Herbert Hoover, they thought he should reject that bill, but he didn't. He signed it. It led to retaliation, something we've also seen recently. Whenever the U.S. raises tariffs, a lot of other countries retaliate.
And that's what we saw with Donald Trump's tariffs. Literally, every time we put tariffs on China, China retaliated with tariffs on us, or flooding the market with aluminum and steel.
Started a trade war. Canada raised tariffs against the U.S., Western European countries. So just as we're in...
So when Trump continued on, he raised tariffs against Canada and the EU. They did the same thing back.
This fragile equilibrium, we have a trade war started. And I've written a book sort of on this whole thing, on the relationship between the Smoot-Hawley and the Great Depression. But it was just not a good development for the world economy. And what happened is, and it wasn't just because of the trade war, there are a lot of other factors going on, there's this downward spiral of world trade. And this is sort of a neat chart, shows month by month, starting 1929, 30, 31, 32, 33, every consecutive month, there's just trade is going down, 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 down. Now, partly it's because of demand, the huge shock with the Great Depression, but the trade war is on top of this. and a lot of other factors too. So this is, once again, not integration, this is disintegration. And so it was not a good time for the world economy. In fact, the Great Depression was the largest trade shock we've ever sort of observed in terms of the decline in trade, largely because of demand. These are all the other periods. But
And as you can see, this is protectionism. And we're going to talk about this tomorrow, plus a lot of other unanswered questions in regards to how does it affect immigration, how does it affect our jobs, and the overall aspect of free trade and the importance of it. When you go to protect a country by closing it off and raising tariffs, we have historical data proving it's bad. Trump, he don't care.
notice, so the volume of world trade fell by 25% over these 3 or 4 years. Half of it has been attributed to protectionism. That is, of course, with declining demand, trade is going to fall, but it was half of this is due to the restriction of trade across countries due to the movement towards protectionism.
And that protectionism, like I said, is a fact that some people believe that if we have to put these tariffs on so we can protect our jobs and do things like that. And tomorrow, I'm going to walk you through why that's not true. So see you tomorrow. Sage out.